I just chatted there for a bit. So we were just talking about the self-employment, and that's actually pretty huge because that's never been available before, and it's such a relief because even when people are on salary, like through their companies, you can be on salary and pay CPP, but if you haven't paid EI, you can't get EI, and that's the problem that a lot of entrepreneurs are facing right now.
That's right. And I think the system is actually also overflooded right now for EI. And I think it's actually starting to delay some of the claim payments as well, because so many people actually aren't eligible for EI. So it's starting to become a pretty significant issue from that perspective too. So the good news is, again, this was just the emergency reserve fund, and that they had originally listed, when they talked about it, they said it would be $900 every 2 weeks. And now it's $2,000 per month. And then if those that go on to EI, their EI runs out, they'll be able to apply for this as well.
Okay, so just to summarize, because some people came a little bit later and with what happened, what you're saying is that as of yesterday, there's a new announcement that self-employed people and who else can access these funds?
So anyone that doesn't have enough hours, so if you've worked for less than 600 hours this year, you wouldn't be eligible for EI either. And anyone that is a temporary foreign worker, they would also be able to have access to it this way too, if they weren't eligible again for EI. So pretty much it's for anyone who wasn't eligible for this program over here will be eligible over here.
Right, and so this is a new application that people are going to be able to access as of April 6th, and
Yes.
You were saying that it's going to be about $2,000 a month.
It's $2,000 a month for up to 4 months, and the application, they said that the advantage of this is that you'll get your money within 10 days.
Right, perfect. And then, and again, you were saying if you run your own business, you've been paying yourself salary, but you didn't pay into EI, or you've been paying yourself dividends, like it totally doesn't matter. It's an emergency relief fund that covers anybody who can't get EI.
That's right. That's right. And so what we're not quite sure on is if it's going to be similar in terms of what I would say, is it proportionate to your income? That hasn't been quite, I think, hammered out yet, similar to EI, where it's 55% of your earnings, but that caps out at 52,000. I don't know if it's going to be the same. They just talk about it being a $2,000 fund right now.
Okay. And what have you heard for employees who filled out their application last week? Do you know, because you just mentioned that there's been over 1 million applications.
Yeah.
When we were chatting earlier.
Yeah, 1 million applications in less than 2 weeks. So what we know is any of the people that we've been part of in terms of temporary layoffs or otherwise, no one has received any money yet. And it's been about 14 days is the longest so far. So it's, I think, going to be a very frustrating process for many individuals over the next while. They'll get the money. It's just as a matter of when. So yeah, in terms of if they were eligible for EI, they are to stay on that path for EI. This is realistically just for people who weren't eligible for EI.
Right, the new program, yeah.
Yeah.
The other question that some people had was about, there's been things, it's so confusing in the news and all the stuff that's going on, and there's been mention of you can get a top up after your EI and just all these extra things going on.
Yeah, as far as we can tell, and it was very clear on the One Federal page that it is not a top up. However, there are lots of articles that are referring to it as a top up. And in a world where we deal with benefits and many organizations tend to add top ups as a supplemental benefit, say for maternity leave, that kind of a thing, it can be very confusing because the first response even, for my team was, well, that means if I'm laid off, do I get this EI plus this? And that's not the case. It's not a top up in the traditional sense.
Okay. Some businesses have people who work for them who only work a couple hours a week.
Yeah.
Is that April 6th going to kick in for them, or there's like a certain minimum that you have to have worked?
it doesn't look like that's all baked. Again, if they would have been eligible for EI, they might be able to go apply for that. It certainly was talking about those employees who continue to work. This could have been a benefit for them as well. Again, I wish it was just announced 2 hours ago. I wish I had more details for you. But I mean, if as soon as I know, I'll send some more information to you that we can pass along to everyone.
Okay.
That's here too.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, it just, again, April 6th is, they've now been definitive about when the application will be available.
And then what about, I'm not sure if this is in your area of expertise, but there's mention of a fund that'll help employers keep some of their staff.
Yeah.
Is that in your realm?
Yeah, so that also was mentioned today, and it's 10% of payroll that is available to employers, and they can actually reap that benefit right away. So basically what they need to do is they need to calculate what their payroll would be from March 18th to March 31st for the first one, for example, and then times your payroll times 10%, take that amount. So if your payroll is $10,000, then you have $1,000 that you just wouldn't remit through the taxes portion of your payroll. So that's how you get to keep that money right now, right out of the gate. It's a maximum of $25,000 per employer, as long as you qualify for a small business tax credit, as well as a charity or a nonprofit. And it's $13.75 per employee that you would be able to keep. So you do need to kind of make sure that all your calculations are straight from that perspective. We're hearing from most of our small businesses, including myself, it's not enough. It's not necessarily enough to keep anyone.
Yeah, going from 10,000 to 1,000, like it doesn't really help.
No, and you know, so I'm not sure it's going to do what the intent of the program was meant to do. But at the same time, you know, my thought was I wasn't going to kick any gift horse in the mouth just yet, and still hopeful that there will be more options for small businesses as we continue to, you know, have longer and longer ARs. Whereas, you know, for me, clients are saying, we don't want you to go anywhere, we still need you, but we're not going to be able to pay you for 120 days. And then there's this fine balance of being there for your clients, but not being able to pay your own team. What comes first, right?
Yeah, that's really hard.
It is. We're seeing it more and more all the time. So,
is there anything else that you're seeing in this past week? What have you seen that's changed? We spoke about a week ago, and now I mean, it changes daily.
Well, you know, it hasn't necessarily changed. I think there's been more clarity around things. You know, the temporary layoffs, who's using a temporary layoff versus who's not. I mean, that's all we've been doing is temporary layoffs. We've, again, been really encouraging to give that notice period as part of the temporary layoffs, just to further protect employers. But more and more organizations still continue to just, hey, we just know tomorrow you're going to be temporarily laid off. So I think overall, I think it's pretty demoralizing right now. And it's that so nothing has really changed other than we're seeing that scope just continue to creep of who is continuously laying people off. I think those that thought they were going to be fine, it's been less than 4 days later where, you know, we've had the conversations 5 days ago, and now, you know, today we're actually acting on something, and 5 days ago they didn't think anything was wrong. You know, they were like, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a bump, but we're fine. And then it was oh man, the gravity of all of it that's really come to light now, which is unfortunate. The other side that I am seeing, and this is the part that I'm a little bit concerned about, is so there are far more lawyers now reaching out to employees to say, hey, you've been temporarily laid off, we think you've been constructively dismissed, let me file a claim for you. And I just think it's just such poor timing right now. I get it, employees are just looking out for themselves, lawyers are business people too, they're looking out for themselves as well. But the thing to remember about this is people are only temporarily laying you off, so there's still a business to come back to when we get out of this. This isn't about screwing over employees. This isn't about hurting anyone. It's to make sure that there is a business, that there is some viability left.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm a little concerned, and my lawyers are saying, you know what, we're going to be fine. You know, in terms of small businesses are going to be fine in the way they've handled it. It's a pandemic situation. They did it the best of their abilities given the circumstances. Normally, it's only a constructive dismissal. Well, I shouldn't say normally, but realistically, what they're also looking at is, did you do this in bad faith? And if employers are realistically not doing anything in bad faith, we're hopeful that there's going to be a good response from that perspective as well. But it's you know, right now we need to stick together, all of us. We're all in the same boat. It's not just to keep money for us as employers anymore. It's just to survive. That is literally the only goal right now. So I think from that perspective, it's starting to it's starting to eat at my soul a little bit, because again, I know these businesses, if they had any other way, they would have kept them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a concern for me in the last week that I've seen.
Thank you. We have a question from Champions Creek. I think I can, Larissa, I don't think I can unmute. So, oh, there we go.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Michelle, for your information. When you're talking about the temporary layoffs, because I know that I've heard about that, where they're saying that they're not necessarily legal. Is that the same case if you're in an industry that it was mandated that you close?
No, see there. So then, and just let me understand. Are you in Alberta as well?
Yeah, I'm in Alberta. And
okay.
I'm
so that's an important distinction, and I asked that question because provincially all the rules change. But as it relates to Alberta employment standards, if you were an organization that was mandated to close, you definitely fit within it's Section 62 of the Employment Standards Act, and then it's Section C that says you let them know as soon as you knew, basically, and where you were mandated to close, that would fit within that. Again, the people that I've been talking to, both legal counsel and otherwise, have certainly said that that would fit within the definition. Obviously, the things that would have made it better for everybody is if they actually would have put in their employment agreements or in their offer letters that, you know, this is subject to a temporary layoff, or this role could be subject to a temporary layoff. But there are very few that actually have that clause inside their employment agreements. And so, like I said, there's some risk. I'm not going to tell you you are totally devoid of risk. But that being said, those organizations that were absolutely mandated, they should be fine.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
We just saw a bunch of people come into the webinar. So if you have a question for Michelle right now, what you can do is at the bottom of your screen, it says participants. If you click there, it'll open a chat window. You can ask a question via chat, or you can raise your hand on the side, and just make sure that you know what your name is. So that when we ask you, when we say yes, come join us and ask your question, we know who that is. What else?
What else? Yeah. Yeah, I think for me now, what we've been really working hard on is just compiling resources from a mental health perspective. I am certainly very concerned. It's one thing to get COVID, even the likelihood that I most likely have put myself in a situation that I have it as well. That's not scary to me. We'll get through this. We can beat all that. To me, it's the loss of business, the loss of income, the heck, working together remotely at home with your spouse is difficult now, or the stress of the kids at home. I read a very sad stat that the kids' help phone the calls have either tripled or quadrupled since this all has gone down. And so for me, the mental health issues are going to be far worse than what this COVID is actually doing. And so just compiling the resources, we've been working really hard at compiling a bunch of different resources that, again, not only support taking away the stigma of mental health, but also just giving people access and recognizing that there are a bunch of free resources as well. And again, we've taken it upon ourselves, even at Elevated, to make sure we're reaching out to anyone that we've been part of the temporary layoffs, to make sure that they know what access that they have to a whole bunch of different things, but certainly mental health is our biggest concern.
And I know Calgary, I think they're called, CARYA. They're funded by the United Way, and they've been putting together emergency response units. There's somebody on call all the time now to answer the phones, and there are a lot of calls coming in from people in distress over their income, just not knowing what the future holds. And anybody locked in the house with with your family, it gets a little bit stressful, right?
I know. I had to put I'm technically quarantined in my basement right now, but so my husband and I were chatting over text. He's just upstairs, and I said, okay, so once this is all over, what does success look like in our relationship, and how we take care of the house, and how we take care of we have a 5-year-old. What does success look like? And he said, how do I know that you're an HR person and you're trying to build like KPIs through our relationship, key performance indicators? And I'm like, yes, because I said, when we know who's responsible for what, we can be held accountable. But when we feel like, when we've said we're a team, but we don't really know who's taking the lead on the team, you know, so we just started talking about it, and we hammered some things out. I mean, things have happened in my personal life as well. And in this situation, we have zero help at all. You know, it's just the three of us trying to make it through. And it's so difficult on Jeff, just trying to be Maddie's main support person now. So what does that look like? So we had to talk about it. But I mean, it's changing the landscape. This thing is changing the landscape of everything.
Yeah.
And so just really figuring out how we're going to do that, how we can support, how we can help other HR professionals do the same thing. I mean, last week when we learned, this is crazy actually, last week when we learned how difficult the EI process was, we decided to do a dummy application and step-by-step it. And so then today, just before this call, I got a call from someone in Saskatchewan, not a client of ours at all. And he phoned and he said, okay, so I got this form from this company, and I didn't recognize the company at all. And he said, so do I put in the company name, Elevated HR Solutions? And I said, no, you put in your company name. So now I'm imagining all these people are putting in Elevated HR, and I laid all these people that there are no ROEs going to be accounted for. So it's like, oh man. So we went to go help with a resource.
Yes.
And people are completely misunderstood it now. And he said, well, this temporary code doesn't work, because we did a screenshot of our temporary code. And we said, no, that's because it's just a sample. He's like, okay, but this was supposed to help me. My HR person said this was supposed to help me. So it's, again, just really making sure that when people get laid off or anything, they become, they don't hear anything. It's like Charlie Brown. It's wah, 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 right?
And when people are under so much stress, and we're finding that, like with the different interviews that I've done, employers are saying, you know, we got to be super patient, because there's these really weird questions coming up, and it's really just from a place of like so scared and don't know what to do, that your brain shuts off, right?
Yeah. Rational thinking is out the window, and the best thing that you can be is patient. And yet, even from my perspective, like that patience only, you know, because we're dealing with all this other stuff too as business owners, that patience only lasts so long. But again, the goal is, and this is the thing that I really want to impress upon most people, is how you treat people right now in this temporary layoff phase is going to affect you when we come back. It will, those people that treated their employees well, and I don't mean financially, because that's not there, but simply picking up the phone, reaching out, talking to them, connecting with them, you know, helping them find resources as well. Those people, you're gonna be able to recruit back, and people are gonna come back to you. But those that aren't, that basically it does feel like you're being kicked to the curb, I am seeing, you know, they're not going to come back. They're going to go to the competitor. They're going to go, you know, and now you have no control over that whatsoever. So how you treat people during this process is incredibly important. And it doesn't cost anything to be kind.
Yeah.
You know,
Michelle, we have a question from Marta Radic, and she was just going back again. I'm going to summarize the news that just happened a couple of hours ago. Said that now any self-employed person, whether you paid yourself salary and you didn't pay into EI, or you're paying dividends, also part-time workers, and you were saying immigrant workers, like anything that doesn't qualify, anyone that doesn't qualify for EI,
Right.
can get this new application that's coming out April 6th. And
Yeah.
Marta's question is the $2,000 per month for
Lower.
for part-time workers? So it says, is $2,000 per month lower for part-time workers? So what?
I would assume it is, but that being said, they haven't been very clear. Is it just a one-time flat amount? Doesn't matter, you matter where you are. I would have a tough time believing that, you know, someone who makes $70,000 gets the same amount as someone who's made $10,000. I have a hard time, but maybe from an ease perspective, that is what they're going to do. But I don't have those details just yet. But I promise, you know, we'll send those over to Daphne as soon as we've got more clarity around it.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be sharing anything on the blog post. We also have, if you go, we'll share a link in the chat. If you want to sign up, I've got a kind of like a newsletter or like a VIP club where we're sharing anything that Michelle sends, these videos, all that kind of stuff, and keep everybody informed. We have another question. Are there any limitations on benefits for young adults who lose their jobs, who are living with parents, you know, who they're being supported financially in another way?
Right. So no. So it really is based on if they would be typically eligible for EI and they can go apply for EI because they've lost their role. They don't ask about any of the financial assistance that they're receiving from parents. Make sure that if you're giving them money, it would be gifted, I suppose, but they aren't asking about housing or anything like that. It's just, I was making this money and now I'm not. And as long as they were paying into EI, again, they'd have to be over, I believe, don't quote me on this either. I thought you had to be over 18 before you start paying into EI. So realistically, you'd have to be 18. That would be the only limitation. So, but that's still a young adult.
Okay. Another question, our work has just notified employees that they'll be moving to 80% work and wages effective April 1st, and we'll be applying for the WorkShare program. Are there options for employees to top up that 20% in wages that they're losing? So can you tell me about the WorkShare program?
Well, the WorkShare program would be your top up. So if somebody actually applied for that, it's a 17-page document to apply for a WorkShare program. And so if people have applied for it, what it will do is it actually allows you to go up, you'll get a reference code and you can go apply for EI for that 1 day of income that you're losing. That is what the WorkShare program is all about. Going to 80% though without the WorkShare program has been very normal for most of the organizations that we're working with. In fact, we've seen it. We are seeing drops in salary from 10 to 30% and not changing hours, still being asked to work 40 hours a week. So, which again, some people could state that potentially could be constructive dismissal as well. But given the times and depending on the notice periods and things like that, employers at least have the right to ask, you know, for them to do it. And again, the goal is just to stay afloat. So yeah, so if your organization has been good enough to apply for a WorkShare program, it was to come into place right away. We finally got a couple of people being approved for it. It took about 14 or 15 days before they were approved for it. And it will be, again, retroactive. So if they've applied, they will get the information. They can start it on April 1st, but you need a reference code before you can go apply for the WorkShare program.
Okay, so the WorkShare program, if I'm understanding correctly, is you can reduce your hours to 80%, and then the government will top up that day that you lost, that's right, 20%, so that you're back to your 100% salary.
Not 100%, 95% is what the max amount would be. But again, if you earn more than that, there's still a cap.
Okay.
On that day.
Okay. If a business closes voluntarily, even though not mandated, are workers still eligible?
Yeah, if the business closes, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, what the employees should be asking for is an ROE as soon as possible so that they can go apply for EI. But yeah, if the business closes voluntarily, even if they haven't been mandated, which tells me then the employees aren't able to work from home either. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing that a lot in hotels. Hotels are technically essential services,
But considering no one's staying in a hotel right now, we're seeing several hotels close down throughout the province.
Right.
And so that would be considered a voluntary close, but everyone is eligible for EI. And if they aren't eligible for EI, they would then also be eligible for
New
this
program.
new
Okay,
program.
and then an ROE is your employer submits an ROE electronically, and it's usually done through payroll, and it's when
It
they
is
do the
usually done.
temporary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Um,
And
if
you
an
can apply for EI without the ROE though.
Yes, you can still apply, and it can be submitted afterwards. And it doesn't ask you when you apply for the any kind of ROE. It's supposed to be submitted by the employer, right?
That's right. Yeah.
They followed I looked at your instructions and I understood. Elevated HR is not smart and smart.
But you put in, yeah, you put in the right company name.
Yeah. Okay, so from Sarah, if any employee is looking to leave on maternity leave in June, will 80% hours on WorkShare affect the EI benefits available once they apply for EI on mat leave?
Yeah, I think it could potentially affect it. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that either. I still haven't gotten full clarity on how this situation is going to fold into all those that are going on to maternity leave just yet. I think that that's coming. We've certainly been part of a lobby group that wants clarity around maternity leave benefits, because again, it is based on hours. It is based on, what they were earning beforehand. Same thing for anyone that's just coming off sick leave prior to COVID, that would also affect things. And now they're seeing themselves also be laid off, and they, who's going to have access to what. What we do know is that if EI runs out, then they're going to be able to apply for this emergency benefit after the fact as well. So if you're June, so if we're April, May, June, that's 3 months away. But again, I know that right now Service Canada is not answering any calls, so it's going to be a difficult question for you to get through, and how are they going to apply it. But it certainly has been something that we're lobbying for just to get clarity on. So I'll have to get back to you. I'm not sure how fast we would be able to get back to you on that one.
And for the self-employment, is that what it's called? I want to call it the right thing for April 6th. What's that?
It's the emergency reserve fund.
Okay, the emergency reserve fund. Do you know yet if people would have had to work a certain amount of hours, like in March, or how far that hasn't?
No, it was not based on hours, because that's who it's for, are those that haven't worked enough in order to receive it. So to me, it's anyone that has lost their job or lost employment or lost income because of it. They weren't looking at hours. They weren't looking at anything like that. Anyone that wouldn't normally be eligible for EI was supposed to apply for this, and it wasn't based on. And that's going to be the interesting part, where we were asked the question before of how are they determining then who gets what.
Yeah, and if they say they didn't work in March at all, they were working in January but expected to work in April.
Right.
Did they qualify, or they hadn't worked for several months, expected to work in April? How are they going to
determine that? And that's where that goes back to that question we were talking about earlier, where, okay, so, is it just a flat amount then? For everyone, and then is that fair? Is that right? I can't necessarily be part of even that rhetoric at this point, is because those people who maybe were making nothing should be able to get something. I'm not sure in this situation, because now there's no way out. But again, as soon as we know how that's going to look, how that works, Daphne, you're the first person I'll connect with.
Thank you. And so I just want to be respectful of Michelle's time. If anybody has one last question, we can get that through. Otherwise, what we'll do is, Myrna, can you post the link to the post? I think I might have it here, where we will keep sharing information. Yes, I have it here. So I'm going to share this. This is on LinkedIn, and if you're, just got to do it to everyone. This is the post where we've been writing some notes, and I will get the link for where you can sign up to get more information through email. So this is our last question. Michelle, the company I work for has been hit too. In response, they've decided to reduce our hours by 50%, and consequently our salaries are half. Is this legal?
It's a good question. Is it legal? I mean, it's tough to say. What I can say though is if you're at 50%, you can still also go apply for EI as well. That should be an option for you as soon as it drops below a certain threshold that you can apply for EI, and you don't need to be on a WorkShare program. Ideally they're giving you some notice, but again, depending on the situation and who they're at, my biggest recommendation would be, unfortunately, for you to realistically go have someone else go take a look at it. We are seeing it happen though. Again, it's the idea is behind just trying to keep the business viable and trying to keep the business moving. And so, yeah, I haven't quite seen that large of a cut, especially if you were a full-time employee. But hourly, we certainly are seeing those changes happen for sure. And again, the answer realistically is just all about survival. So the alternative to that would have been they just could have all temporarily laid you off and you'd have nothing. And so I'm wondering if, again, because you would have access to EI as well for those hours, for the hours that are lost, I'm wondering if they felt like this at least gets you a little bit better than what EI would.
And can you explain how you get EI if you're still working? Like, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, so normally, and don't be surprised, what we usually recommend to our employers that we work with is we actually tell them to lay you off so you get an ROE, and then we start paying you again for, because you can work while on EI. So for example, the way that it would work normally would be, okay, I lost my job, but I'm going to go get a part-time job somewhere else. It's basically this company now has become your part-time job. So that is an option, but so they're paying you a little bit, and then you can still get EI based off of that. And again, most of the time, the way we've seen it work is it washes out at the end of the year. Like if you've over received from EI, they will claw back that money from you.
Okay.
But yeah, so it is, but what we normally recommend when you're doing that big of a cut, specifically the 50%, is a layoff, and then you hire them, they apply for EI because then they've received a shortage of work code, and then you hire them for those less hours that you require them for.
Okay, and then do you hire them still as a part-time employee or as a contractor?
Oh no, not a contractor. I would still hire them as a temporary. Yeah.
Yeah. Then they can still pay into EI and get
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And everyone, the link is spartanspark.com/lemonade, and we will be sharing Michelle and all the upcoming speakers. We're going to be having webinars every Wednesday with different topics. Next week, we've got a event manager. She does conferences for Bloomberg and University of San Francisco, and she's going to be teaching about project management using Asana and some of the tips and tools. And the week after, we have Vea, who's teaching how to have 0 inboxes. We're all online and our inbox is getting all full, so how to maintain 0 emails in your inbox by using all these different strategies. So thank you for joining us. Stay in touch with Michelle and I. We're on LinkedIn. We're trying to be busy on Twitter, helping everybody get through this and create some hope and some good collaboration so that we can all be really do not, well, let's not say really well, but let's get out of this on the other side with each other's support.
I think this is the first time where I can genuinely say that we're all in this together. There isn't somebody that we don't know that isn't directly or impacted or is handling it in some way. And so the only way we're going to get out of this is by being part of a community and continuously contributing, regardless if you're a small business owner or an employee of that same small business or otherwise. We're going to have to work together, all of us, to get out of this and just show support in any way that we can.
Exactly.
Thanks for having me today, Daphne.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.